Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our second day of the TagoIO Immersive Training for Software Developers 2025. I got to say, yesterday we had an excellent turnout. It looks like this session is going to be no different. So I'm really excited about that. You'll also notice in chat, I have our LinkedIn. There's a link there for LinkedIn. It's a great way to follow us, to get updates on upcoming events and new releases and just everything that we're doing here at Tago. So that's really great. I see we have people from Douglas from Brazil. We have somebody from Austria, Canada. I love seeing all the customers from around the world. Ecuador, I believe Ramiro was on the sessions yesterday as well. I'm starting to see, good old James. Welcome, James, from the Philippines. Always great to see the faces or the people again from around the world. Got San Antonio, Brazil, Peru. That's great. So today is this is one of my favorite ones, to be quite honest with you. Yesterday was great. I like everything that we did yesterday, but today's really great. We have Victor Lima with us today, which will be presenting later on. We have Klaus Boris. Both of them are lead software developers here at Tago, been with Tago for years and years and years. So I'm really excited to have them on board. One thing to note, after the session today, you'll receive a survey. Please take the survey, right? We want to know how we did, what we can improve on, what you liked, and what you would like to see in the future and things like that for these, because we do these about 2 or 3 times a year. And they're, as I said at the beginning, they're very, very popular. So make sure you do that. But there's one question in that link, in that survey, to where it's going to ask you if you want to receive a $100 promotion. What that promotion is, it's for our Learning Center. At the end of the webinar, I'll show you on our website where you can go to get that. But basically, if you take our Learning Center, there's a certificate at the end that normally is a $100 fee. We're going to waive that. So if you answer yes, I would like the certificate, the promo. I can't remember the exact wording of the question. But if you say yes to that, then we'll send you the promotion code. But I'll show you the Learning Center at the end of the webinar or the session today. So with that, let's get into the agenda. So again, as I said, it's day 2. We're scheduled from 10 a.m. Eastern time. As I said, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. I see we have a lot more people joining here. Brazil. A couple from Brazil. So today, we're scheduled from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. I don't know if we'll use up the entire time. We may. It might be a little less than 2.5 hours, but we'll just play it by ear, see how it goes. As always, if you have questions, please post them in chat, right? And we will get to them as soon as we can. So that's always a great way to communicate with the developers. So today is how to visualize data is some of it. Custom widgets, using formula, conditions, dictionary, and widgets, data analytics, and different ways to use metadata. All these are very critical for different reasons. But if I was to sum it up in one reason, for me as a customer success manager that speak to customers all day, every day, it's that a lot of customers don't realize how you could really make your dashboard beautiful, right? And it's not really just about visualization, right? Analytics, right? I mean, Tago has so many features. We've been in business 10 years, so we've had plenty of time to refine the platform, add new things, listen to our customers, and add those sorts of things. So all these topics today are extremely important, right? And really how you can not only beautify your dashboard and your end user experience, because that's the name of the game, right? But also how to optimize. One way is to use metadata. And Victor will go into that a little bit. But there's a lot of things you can do on Tago. There's no way we would even have time, even if this was a 4-hour webinar, we wouldn't have time to go through everything, right? So I highly recommend reach out to your customer success manager. If you're already a customer and you haven't taken advantage of your free 45-minute onboarding, I highly recommend that you do that, right? It's extremely important. It's valuable that you interact with your customer success manager, not just with the onboarding, but keep up with your customer success manager as you are scaling up with Tago, because we can really help you. Whether that's 15 minutes with a developer, you have some technical questions you need done, whatever it is, think of the CSM as everything Tago. To put it, very clear, we are everything Tago. So that is really important there. So I see Alex Kirk. He's also a CSM in Brazil. I'm sure some of you folks in Brazil there know Alex. He also covers other regions as well. For me, I cover the US and Canada. But with that, let's get on to the next slide. How to visualize data. For this, I'm going to introduce Klaus Boris, which again is a lead software developer, and he'll be talking about how you can visualize data along with things that go along with that. So with that, Klaus, I'd like to pass it to you so you could start your presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, David. So my name is Klaus. Today, I'm very excited to be here to talk about data visualization, and also to be talking about custom widgets. I will be presenting these two separate sessions for the training. The first one is for dashboards and data visualization. When we think about visualizing data on a dashboard, we usually think that a dashboard needs to be pretty and needs to convey the information that we want, right? But when we think about that, it all comes down to communication. Because when you're thinking about how to communicate with your users, you need to not only show the data in a dashboard that looks good, but it's also easy to use, easy to understand, that they shouldn't need a manual to understand what's going on, right? If you open a dashboard, you want to see the data, you want to see what's going on, you want to see what's happening in your factory, in your farm, or whatever your sensors are located, or whatever application you have that might be a bit different. You can use TagoIO for different things, since you can use entity for databases and so on. But when it comes to sensors or in IoT in general, you will be using the dashboards to visualize the data, right? So when you think about communication in that sense, it's not only about making the dashboard look beautiful or pretty or maybe just comfortable to use. It's also about how this information is going to be understood and parsed by the users, right? So I will be sharing my screen. Please let me know if there's something wrong here in the screen share. It looks good, right, David? Just to confirm.
Yep, looks great, Klaus.
Yep, okay. So I will start with this dashboard, which is the initial version. Because when you think about developing dashboards or even development in general, we think about iteration, right? We have a first version we are going to be improving upon. We start making it look more like what we want, or maybe we start throwing everything and see what sticks, right? We can start with a prototype. We can start just putting everything here and then start removing things, or we can start adding more things that are missing. I forgot to mention, guys, so if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chats. David can let me know if there are any questions. We won't have that many pauses in this first section of the training for the dashboards, but on the custom widgets, I will pause a little bit more because I will be showing code. That's just a warning, or just letting you know that in the second part for the custom widgets, I will be showing more code. So for now, I will be talking about how to visualize data, how to make it presentable, but easy to understand as well. So when you look at this dashboard, don't try to understand everything that's going on here. It's a lot of things on the screen, right? There's a lot of text. It's not only about putting images instead of text. It's not about that, but if you see that, it's just a lot of information. You can see letters and numbers, right? You can see a bunch of stuff that might not make that much sense. So if you see here, we have numbers that mean temperatures, right? David, I'm feeling like I'm dropping video. Is everything good? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Perfect.
Okay, so I'll keep moving, so please let me know. So when you think about the data that we're showing on the screen, we have numbers that 21 here or 45 on the top left, top right corner. These numbers don't mean that much. You can combine them with the text below, and that might make more sense, right? You can read that and think, hey, okay, so this is humidity, that's temperature. There's a chart there, but the chart is kind of doesn't say anything. It just says like sensor alert count a bunch of times. This table also says like sensor log on each of the columns. And that's like the basics, right? You need your users to just look at this and understand what they're seeing. You need to communicate with your users because your users might have their own users that will be using their applications and so on. So people need to use a dashboard and just understand the data that they're seeing and what they need to do, right? If there's a critical scenario that you need to see, like how sensors for, like, let's say refrigerator monitoring, right? You're monitoring a bunch of refrigerators. So how do you know when to take action? How to say that, hey, guys, maybe send a maintenance crew, or maybe you can set up alerts with analysis and so on. But for the data visualization part, for the users seeing a dashboard and making critical decisions on the spot, really, they need to just look at this and understand. So why I'm asking you to just hear what I'm saying and not pay that much attention to the dashboard, because this first version, this starting point for us, is not that ideal, right? I just threw a bunch of stuff, the dashboard, and we're going to be sticking around and see what sticks, right? Because we're going to be removing, we're going to be adding, we're going to be doing a lot of iteration on it, because you don't need to have like the perfect first version. You need to just listen to feedback, right? You can talk to our customer service or customer support. You can talk to your customers as well and understand, hey, is the dashboard working perfectly? Can you guys understand everything that's going on there? And maybe just from that, you can get like a little bits of information that may point you in the right direction, right? Because it's not always easy for us to just step back and just think like our users, right? Our users have like different experiences, different minds that we have. So they might not think about this in the same way. So I put everything here. So for me, this makes sense, right? There's temperatures here and there's humidity here. There's these two alert counts. I don't remember which one is which. Actually, I do. But yeah, it's not the same thing. But we are going to be expanding on these. Also, these is not ideal, because the explanation for this, why it says sensor log on each column, is because I'm using the variable name, which is the default, and I'm bringing the data here, which is in the cell, from the metadata on the data record. So today it's possible to use entity for this, not only with the entity table widget, which is new, fairly new. You can see our documentation for more details on that. I believe Vitor may have talked about it yesterday. So since this is using metadata, the variable name is being in formulas, right? The name is being shown here is not clear. This is like an identifier. This is kind of readable, right? Also, this base here is not ideal. It's a table. It's fairly cramped here. It doesn't have that much space. This part here is a chart that shows alerts over time. You may not want to see this all the time, right? Your users might not need to see all the time the sensor alerts just going up and down. They might need to see the alerts that are going on to understand what to do, right? So again, I said a lot of things. We're going to be clearing this up, and I believe that the dashboard will make more sense to everyone. So think about this dashboard. Think about just give it a quick thought. Maybe you understand everything that I'm trying to do in this dashboard. Maybe you don't. I believe it will be clearer on the next iterations that we're going to be showing. So I'm looking at the chat. I'm not seeing any questions, so I will be just showing the next dashboard for now. So first, we're going to be adding a little bit more context, right? I mentioned that we're going to be adding and removing information and data and widgets, because when we add more context, what I mean by that, it's not only just having widgets that show variable names and the data value, because when you think about the variable, your users might not even know what variable means. If you're a developer, you know, but these things are not clear enough. Maybe your variable even can have numbers or even be shortened, right? It could be like indoor temp or itemp. We've seen this in several applications from customers and our own developers. Like when you shorten a variable name, it could be like for indoor temperature, I could have like itemp, and it's not ideal because users will not understand what itemp means. So another thing that we have added here as context is showing the units, because it's not only about like making your application accessible to a global population, right? If you have users in the United States, you probably putting Celsius in temperature might make them need to think about the conversion, right? They are used to this when they know the conversion, but also the same goes for people in other countries, right? People don't usually understand Fahrenheit like at a glance. We need to think about, okay, so what does 90 Fahrenheit means? I don't know. Maybe your users don't know well, how to convert to a local temperature.
Hey,
so
Klaus,
let me know.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off your camera a little bit because it seems to be glitching. Your screen share is fine, but your camera's glitching a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, I shut it down. Okay. So let me know if the screen glitches again. So for this, I have added like also a percentage, because humidity might not be the measurement that people are familiar with. Maybe your users don't know, but usually people know. But it's great because you need to just look at the data. Instead of like just saying 45, you can just see like the actual unit of measurement. And also I have cleaned up, if you look at this bottom part of the dashboard here, which we have the sensor log, which is a table. Now each of the columns specify what they mean. So it's not the same variable repeated over and over again. So it's easier to understand. But again, we're just clearing some things up and adding more context. So everything here just says something now. So these are severity 1 alerts. These are severity 2 alerts. These are severity 3 alerts. So these are the amounts of alerts that we have for these 3 types, right? And we have the temperatures here. Again, the temperatures were clear enough, right? Because it's set temperature below, even if it's a variable name, but it's okay to understand, right? So everything here is just, I have added more context to the information, right? I didn't make the dashboard look prettier, but if you think about this again, comparing to the previous version, it's more clear what I'm trying to say here, what are you trying to do here. But again, there are things that may not be clear enough for your users, like what is severity 1 and what is severity 3? Depending on your line of work, the numbers might be different, right? You could deem that severity 3 is like bigger, 3 is bigger than 1, so 3 is like a higher priority. Or you can maybe say like DEFCON in the US, like something like that. It's just like, what is the critical parts? What do I need to make a decision on the spot right now to figure things out and fix it? So it's not clear enough for most users unless they understand, right? But if it's like the company that you develop a dashboard for does like their employee onboarding for new employees, they have to explain a lot of things. So these are alerts. But if you add a little bit more clarity through other means like icons, like colors, it will be easier to understand. Again, we're just talking about communication here. So I cannot prescribe like a general solution that will work for everyone or every application or every vertical, every industry. We can prescribe like good practices. And I believe that starting to add more stuff, like context is very important, right? You don't need to like put units on everything, right? It's just time. You need to say seconds all the time, but maybe it's seconds, right? Maybe it's not. So at some point you need to think about, okay, so there's just a number here, or there's just something. Numbers without units of measurements are also valid, of course, but when we're talking about measurements and when we're talking about sensors, they're usually paired together, right? And I'm going to be talking about how to convert between these units for users, right? So here is say Celsius, right? But okay, so how do I make my application available to users that want to use Fahrenheit instead. Okay, we're going to be talking about this in the context of the dashboard, which will be the built-in widgets, which Vitor will be talking about later. But I will be talking about this in the context of a custom widget, so you can leverage our features to develop your own widgets and add these things like custom preferences. Since if the user wants to see Fahrenheit instead of Celsius, they can do it. And it's not about only measurements of temperature. You can do it speed or whatever unit you like pressure or humidity. Even there are other units of measurement for humidity, not only percentage, right? Okay, so at this point, we have added more context. It looks a bit more clear that someone that is new to this application, let's say that someone looks at this and says, okay, so I'm seeing the organization TagoIO, and I'm seeing the building TagoIO headquarters. So this is just me reading it out loud, but your users are going to be doing this with their brain, right? They're just going to be looking at this and thinking what they are seeing, right? So there's temperature, they will look at temperature, okay, there's units, so I don't need to think what unit is this. Also humidity here, it says on the title of the widget, there are different alerts. Here the users might have a question, right? So a new user might see, okay, what's severity 1 and what is 3? Maybe you have onboarded them already in the company, or your customers have done that already. So the customers will, the employees will know what this means. But again, there are things that might not be clear enough, or even just use more brain power than needed, right? So maybe the users will just need to think, because their brain is processing the information, they are reading, right? They're not seeing like images or icons, the things that make it easier, colors to process the information, right? So we're going to be doing a couple of visual improvements here. So this dashboard looks a lot different now, because not only I have added colors to the widgets, but I have tried to also add symbols that mean something in the context of this application. So I have added more context, and now I'm building upon that context to make it even clearer what we mean, right? So in the context of my application, of course, this may vary based on verticals or line of work, right? We have talked to customers before that said that red doesn't mean like a higher priority problem in their sector. But in the context of UI, which is my line of work, it does, right? So for me, for my application, I have put the severity 1 alerts as red. So in my head, this makes sense, right? So for my application, this makes sense. So the user will see this, okay, so red, yellow, and blue. It's kind of easier to process because this is kind of ingrained in our heads if you use interfaces in software, right? Red usually means bad, yellow, orange means okay, kind of bad, but pay attention to this. And blue means just pay attention to this. Do not worry, but okay, right? So this is what I'm trying to mean with these colors. So, and I have made it match on the entire dashboard, right? So not only these icons are clear because I don't have a lot of text. It just says active alerts because it's the units for this, right? It's just not just 2. I could just do 2 here, right? Because it says severity 1 alert here. But for my preference, I liked the visual more like this with a small text below. I have also added an image here, which could also be like a video feed or something, right? Maybe if we're monitoring the TagoIO headquarters, maybe we would like to see how it looks there. So if I could have a camera feed here, I could put it, right? And again, like I mentioned, I have used the same colors on the entire dashboard. So when we talk about severity 1 alerts, we can see here that the color for this line is red. The same goes for the other 2, right? So we can see that these alerts go over time. So we started with very few severity 3 alerts, but at one point we got severity 2, then severity 2 dropped because they became severity 1. This is just like a narrative, right? It's a story that I'm telling with this dashboard. But when you think about visualization, data visualization, you're going to be thinking about how to not tell a story in the common sense of the word, right? But tell a story in the context of the data, right? You need to tell your users or your customers' users what the data means, so they can make critical decisions and analyze, or maybe just overall decisions, right? Not only critical, right? We're not always solving problems. So I've also made a little bit clearer here. It's like severity here with an icon, made it more sense. It looks cleaner than a bunch of text. This column here said true or false. If we're programmers, we know that what true or false means. But for regular users, people that are not development savvy, right? True or false means something else, right? It's just like if it's true or if it's a false, right? So I've also cleaned that up. So this means if the alert was seen or not. So true or false might not make sense to all users. I could have also just replaced the text with yes or no, which can be done with formulas. And here I have used icon conditions, right? And this, like I mentioned, this one hasn't had an identifier, but I've used a prettier label. I'm going to be showing really quickly just the starting points. I'm not going to be going back a lot, but think about this, that like it could be like an ID, like a barcode, like something that it's not easy to process, right? If we say like product code, you can replace it with the actual name through labels, right? Which is metadata. And the entity new feature also has facilities, easy of use for that, okay? So I'm just going to be, I'm off camera, so I'm going to be taking a sip of water, just a sec. Okay, so I believe for my use case, I have made the visual improvements that I want here. So I'm going to be moving on to, okay, so there's still a lot of stuff. Now I need to start removing things because I don't think my users need everything here. I think they need less. I think they need to just be able to access more if they want to, and not all the time. Because like I mentioned earlier, like a small spoiler, in my use case, I don't see the need of seeing this charts all the time. And this use case is fairly simple because it's my story, it's the story of my data. But think about your scenarios in your dashboards. It not only makes it quicker to load if you don't show this all the time, but it makes it easier on the brain to process the information and access it when you need to, and not all the time, right? We don't want to see like a chart all the time that shows, it could have like, it could be worse, right? It could have like 1 billion data points. It can be like very noisy. So your brain will try to figure out what all these lines going up and down mean, and might scare you off or might just make you feel overwhelmed. And it's not every time that you need to show all of the data, right? Sometimes you need to show less to, well, the less is more thing, right? The same. So we're going to be making an effective use. We're going to be thinking about effective use of space here. So in my case, what this means is I have removed the outdoor temperature measurements because in my case, I think that maybe the users can see that through their phone or something, or maybe I could even put like this button says history, right? Because this is a chart, but it could be like clicking here could open the outdoor as well, right? But the chart, as I have spoiled already, is located here now. So this table already feels less cramped. You can read everything that's in it, especially the message, because I have written short messages, but they could be longer, or you could have more columns. Are a lot of things that may make your user feel overwhelmed, or your customers' users feel overwhelmed and not be comfortable when using the dashboards, and then they might have like bad feedback for your product, right? And we need to think about this part of the communication, right? Again, for my use case, so I've made the indoor temperature and indoor humidity measurements bigger so I can see them at a glance. This may not sound like that important, right? It's just the measurement of the temperature and humidity in the TagoIO headquarters. But think about this in your use case. So if this was really important, I could just look from afar. Like this dashboard could be like on a TV on the factory floor. This dashboard can be in several different places. Your users might be looking at this on a mobile phone, and the screen is obviously smaller, right, than a monitor. So making the font size bigger might make it easier for them to see the information that is important. And again, think about this image here like as a camera feed or something, just to be for the users to be quickly able to identify from afar, especially what they're looking at, right? So I'm seeing my screen here. I'm seeing it doubled because I'm looking at the webinar tool. And in the smaller version, it's already better for me than the text, right? And the table, especially being less cramped, is way better, right? Because I could even add more columns now, or maybe just keep it as is. I will be showing some features that your users can, for the user experience part, I will be showing things that are not only on the dashboard, and they're going to be really great for you to understand and know how to use them. But again, think about the charts. Like I mentioned, the chart is not that important in my use case, so maybe putting it on a history button so I can see the history when I want is better, right? Or maybe you can just have a button that opens a form. If you're not aware how to do that, it's just basically I have like a hidden tab here, and this widget is located there. So I made this button open the widget from the hidden tab. It's fairly simple to do using our admin tool. So this is what I came up with to make effective use of the space I have, especially when it, again, like this is like a presentation. So this is not a real application, but if I think about this like a tablet on a factory floor or just a tablet on the office, right? So maybe users are, the people are located far away from that monitor, from that screen, and making the information like bigger and less noisy, it's easier to use, right? Okay, another quick break for water. I'm seeing that we have a question. So Ramiro is asking, when I show a variable in a cards, are you showing the max average temperature? Yeah, so we have that with the data analytics feature that Vitor will be talking about later. So stick around, Ramiro, because we are going to be explaining that. But yes, we absolutely have the option to do that. In this scenario, I'm using the latest value, okay? But you can absolutely use like average, minimum, even sum, right? Or maximum, of course. But you can do deeper data analytics with the data aggregation feature, which is, I'm just going to be showing here, but you can see that the widget has the data from parts, and we have like a bunch of settings here, right? So if you think about this widget, like the card widget, it might not have that functionality, but the widgets overall have it. I'm going to be going to the last parts of the admin part of this presentation, right? Because after that, I will be showing the run. The Tago run is where it's the platform where your users will be accessing your dashboards, or your customers' users will be accessing the dashboards. There we have the access management policies for the users to see dashboards that they are allowed to, devices they are allowed to, and you can customize a lot of things regarding that. But we also have customization for the interface, because if you have already deployed your Tago run, you know that the colors also need work, like I showed here on this iteration process, that my dashboard was looking like very default, very bland, very plain, right? I have added stuff, and then I started removing stuff to make effective use of space here, and I've added colors and added more context. So if you look at these dashboard names as the steps we took, we had our starting points, we have added more context, we made visual improvements after adding more context, And then we started removing when we're talking about effective user space, right? So now let's talk about a little bit about stellar user experience, right? So again, we offer a bunch of features that you can think that your users might not need, but they might need, right? Because you're not your users, you're not your customers' users. They might not see this table. This table could have like a billion columns, right? And you can access the preferences here and just add or remove. This can be, I'm doing this on admin, of course, but this is possible on the Tago run as well. So maybe you need to add like 20 columns, but you can set the defaults and you can make your users able to just skip around things that they don't want, right? I don't need to see the stars here for my preference. I don't care about the scene, so I just remove it. So it's cleaner and you can add more data if you need to, and the users can customize according to their preferences as well. I have also made some slight changes here to the framing of the widgets. So since these two on the top right are for measurements, I have grouped them together by removing the gap between them, right? And I have also made it not round here in this corner. And the same goes for the part below. So if you want to make widgets group together, so the user just, because this is like subtle, right? The user is not going to be thinking about this on a first glance, but when our brain sees things grouped together, we think about that they mean something together. They are conveying information together, grouped together, right? So you can also do that. You can make your dashboards look a lot cleaner when you do these small things, right? Just thinking about the improvements overall to the user experience. So we're going to be wrapping up this first part of the presentation by showing you how it looks in Tago Run, right? Because this is admin. So this is where you develop the dashboards, where you put your devices, where you develop your analysis scripts, right? So the user will be, after all of our changes, the user will see this for the dashboard, right? So this looks a bit off, right? Because first of all, we're looking at a different theme. I have customized the logo with a placeholder here for my company, and I have put like a title here, but it's not cohesive, right? The colors are off because here is using default colors, and I can show more, right? Because I don't have a form here, but if you had an input form, the buttons would be in the default colors as well, which don't match. So I have made a little bit of customization on the run theme. I'm going to be using our quick cheat code to just change it here, just a sec. Because usually on the interface, you would go to the run and the theme tab, and then you change the colors manually here. But since I don't have like 5 minutes here to just do this, I'm just going to be doing a quick change here. So it should be fine. Yeah, it is. So now I have placed the colors for my brand, right? So I have chosen this this slate color here, like the grayish, bluish, because I thought it looked okay with this blue here. And I have made up a little bit of customization. So if I refresh this page here, I can see that these colors changed, right? Because I just use a little bit of a cheat code here to change it quickly. I could reset to the default, but I like this, the way it looks, right? So now it's customized. I can customize the sign up screen. I can put like a background. You can do a lot of these customizations that, again, think about the smallest of the things that you can do. And do not think they're just small when you're trying to communicate with your users. Think about what you're trying to communicate. So if you're having an application, a Tago Run application that is for sensor monitoring on the agriculture industry, maybe if you add a little bit of color that is greenish or brownish, maybe add a background that has a farm or even things like that, might make the user just feel like they're more comfortable using the thing that they're using, right? The tool. For them, it will be something to use like maybe every day, right? You don't have to just throw stuff around. Try things. iterate on your versions, right? Try a first version that you put a lot of information like I did. Think about these steps that I'm showing on the left corner here, right? So these are like, I had 5 iterations of the dashboard and I have reached what I wanted, right? So I have reached a dashboard that conveys only the information that I want. It looks good in my eyes. It looks clean. It doesn't look noisy. I can access information that I need, right? If I need to see the chart, I just click here and it loads. So it loads quicker because this could have like a ton of data points, right? So I don't want it to be slow to load. So I want my users to be able to access this. And okay, so I don't need the chart. Why is my mobile phone on 3G or 4G just taking forever to load? We cannot speed up the internet. We do already load the data separately, but even so, if we're loading a lot of data, it will take some time, right? So that's it for the first part of the presentation. If you have questions, we're going to be taking a break here. David, if you can come online back in.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Klaus.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. 1 second here, everybody. I'm going to show you. Klaus, I'm going to share my screen for a minute while you're taking a break. Yes?
Sure. I have removed mine.
So let me share my screen, guys. So at the top of the session, I mentioned about the survey that you're going to receive. And in that survey, there's a question if you want to receive a promo code. What that is for is if you come here to resources on our site, Learning Center, and then just click on the modules. It's the 100 modules, so you'll need to take these modules. The 100 are a little fundamental. They're kind of fundamental. These are a little more advanced. But at the end, at the conclusion, where you take all these, you'll be asked if you want to take the certificate test. I highly recommend that you do. But there's a $100 fee for that. We're going to waive that $100 fee. So just answer yes in the survey on that question for the Learning Center, and you'll receive the promotion there. And additionally to that, if I just go back a little bit into resources, I showed this yesterday, so this might be repeat for some, but this is more for the new people on the call, is we have these dashboards. So one thing Klaus was talking about is telling a story, right? How to really make your dashboard be visually appeasing, if you will. And there's much more to talk about. Klaus could never have enough time on any of these webinars to go through it all. But an example of that is this. These are all individual widgets, but we've made it look really cool. And it literally just takes a couple clicks, right? So this is one thing that you can do with your dashboard. So it really goes beyond visualization. And by the way, these templates you can download, and once you download, you own them, right? They're yours forever. They're in your profile. You could edit them, change the look, whatever you want to do. So these are very valuable, right, to get you started, because maybe you don't want to start from fresh, right, where you just create your own dashboard fresh. Grab one of these. If they have, a portion of it that makes sense to what you're trying to do, then just modify the rest of it. So these are really great. We're adding to these we add to them, I would say, a few times a year, maybe 3 or 4 times. It just depends. This year we've added quite a bit. But these are really cool to take advantage of that. Sorry about that. So that's really good. And then, of course, in our resources here in the Help Center, I like to show this as well. If you guys have questions, again, reach out to your CSM. I can't stress that enough. But in the Help Center, here you can search for documentation. Up here on the far right is our community. Also on our website, you can look at our roadmap. And a lot of people are interested in security, right? So Tago is ISO 27001 compliant, also GDPR compliant. We just released this week to where now when you sign up for an account, you can choose where your data is, right? If you want it in the EU, it'll be in the EU. You want it in the US, it'll be in the US. So there's things like that. We had that capability behind the scenes, but now you're able to choose that when you're creating an account. So that's really cool. And then from there, oh yeah, yesterday we did talk about Entity, the new structured database. I believe Claus brought that up. If you weren't on yesterday's call, I highly recommend that you read our documentation. Here's just a quick link to it. Entity is pretty cool of what you can do there. And we're always doing really nice releases. So again, I can't stress enough, follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for the newsletter so you can get these types of information. Also, we do have, I think it's Claus and I actually, have an upcoming webinar. So in our events webinar, it's events tab link. You can come in here. Obviously, we're here now. We're going to be having a webinar on February 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern time, deploying portals and mobile apps for IoT solutions. So that's really cool. Register for that. We'd love to have you on there. And then you can just see here, creating backups and data recovery in IoT application, best practices for Entity. Again, learn more about Entity. So just come here and sign up for the items that you want. Then, of course, we have a lot of self-help videos in this area, and videos and things like that to really get you going, right? So Tago is very big on self-help because we want you to be able to build it yourself and be successful, right? So with that, let me go back real quick here. I believe we're ready for Victor here in a minute. Is that right, Claus?
No, I believe I'm up next with the custom widgets.
Oh, yeah, custom widgets. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Claus. He's going to take the custom widgets. And then we're going to, hold on, I do have a question. How can I move to EU on an existing account? You need to reach out to your CSM, Adrian, I believe the name is. Yes. Reach out to your CSM, and they will do that. As a matter of fact, I will contact your CSM here as soon as I am off camera and have them reach out to you. But great question, by the way. But that you'll need to go through your CSM for. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Claus.
Okay, thanks, David. So I'm going to be sharing my screen again. I will be just putting up the camera just for a sec. I will remove it when I start with the code demonstration. It's just so it's not, because I will be talking for a little bit. So it's mostly static screen right now. So you don't need to read all of this, but you can if you want to follow along, okay? So we're going to be talking about custom widget development now. In this first part, I will tell you about a custom, how custom widgets work, because you integrate custom code for HTML and JavaScript for you to be able to develop any custom widget that you like. So if you want to develop a chart that we don't have yet, or if you want to do some more advanced things like put a 3D renderer, or you can do like a custom map, like a fully customized map that you want. You can also make like some payment integration. So if you want your users to use a payment system like Stripe, you cannot do that with our built-in widgets because that's very, it's really customized, right? It's just like a level of customization that we cannot like offer on a general prescription, right? But you can do that with a custom widget. Of course, you need to be paying attention to a couple of details. Like if you want to do things that involve security, I would recommend for you to use middle. I'm going to be calling this middleware, right? Server. So that way your widget code would be communicating with your server code, and then you would be reaching out to Stripe. So I see that my camera is already glitching, so we'll remove it. But anyway, so think about this. So if you're doing things that involve really sensitive data, that's not only like sensor data and things that are already available on the dashboard, try to use an integration with a custom middleware, and reach out to our support or a community if you have questions about advanced usage of custom widgets. And also feel free to ask questions, and by the end of this presentation or even during it, I will try to address the most I can. So when you're building custom widgets, think about this as building widgets that are not available in TagoIO. Maybe we don't have a specific type of chart. Maybe you want these maps or rendering 3D models. Maybe we will have some of these in the future, but if you need them right now, we are not blocking you from having them, because you can develop custom code, which is just regular front-end code. I will be talking about this. It's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's just that. And if you need, like I mentioned, some integration with another service that involves like more privacy-minded things or even security, so think about putting like a small middleware so you can communicate with that third-party service and not just do it directly in the browser. That's recommended in the Stripe documentation, for instance. But when you think about custom widgets, you're going to be putting code that runs in the client's browser, right? Your user's browser will be running that code, so you'll not be putting sensitive data there, right? Your data, like your API tokens. You may not want to put like your token for a third-party service where your user can just open the developer tools in the browser and get the token. And maybe if it's a malicious user, you can just go crazy on that, right? So think about custom widgets as this first point. That's what it does. And you can also make like small improved widgets based on your use case, right? Maybe you need just a display that, I don't know, maybe just blinks when the data changes, and we don't offer that functionality. You can have that. You just build it and you can share with the community. You can ask questions in the community. We have users in the community that have shared custom widget code before. I believe we have like one post in the community that has a library available for use as well. I will be showing you code. Do not forget about that. So for now, I'll just be showing you how to develop custom widgets in general, the basic principles. And also another thing that you can do is build custom normalization for your widgets. So let's say you're working with a chart in TagoIO and you're sending data to sensors, you're sending your sensors data to devices, right? And we have the data record format, right? Which you have value, you have like a group, you have metadata, which you can do a lot. But let's say you want to do something different, like you want an X and Y axis on your chart. You don't axes. You don't want like a time series below. You can do some things with groups in our charts, but if you want to do advanced or even really customized data normalization, if you want to do things that our formulas can't, you can of course reach out to support, because maybe we will implement it in the future. But if you want to do really custom stuff, think about this as like an extension. So custom widgets are not only to fill the gaps that we don't offer, right? But also just to make improvements and make it more usable. Maybe you have like 3 variables and you need to group 3 by 3. Like let's say that you have 3 data records in a sequence and you cannot separate them, but they mean something. Maybe you want to do like a custom widget because it's easier to do than just going through a lot of loops, right? And of course, the most important point is that if it's available in the browser, you can it's very likely that you can use it, right? Like I mentioned, I have done some tests with 3D rendering with a library. I'm going to show this, like React 3 Fiber. It's for the React framework library for the front end, but you can use this to render 3D models. So there's a lot of things that you can do, even custom integrations with Mapbox or something that you can show, like even like a 3D visualization of a factory for example. So these are the scenarios for developing custom widgets. Okay, so this is a lot. I'm just do not need to read this. You do not need to read this at all. So I'm going to be highlighting what we are going to be doing next. We're not going to be writing the widget from scratch because that takes some time, right? But I will be showing the code. The goal for us is to have a chart with real time, so it will update as data comes in. I want to have some custom normalization, which we will use custom preference. So my users will be able to use, let's say, kilometers and miles per hour, vice versa. Okay. So we'll be doing this customization based on a user level, and I will also be showing you how to set that up as well. So for development, like I mentioned before, you can use basically any front-end technology available. You can even do server rendering. If you're already familiar with front-end development, those words will make a lot of sense. But if you just want to use like a simple file, or maybe like 3 files, right? One for HTML, one for CSS, and one for JavaScript. And you can also use your framework of choice, as long as you just make sure to upload the build and bundled artifacts. So let's say that I have the custom widget that I will show. I would be able to upload these 3 files, or maybe more JavaScript because they are linked together. But again, like I mentioned, you can use any framework or library that you have for UI here. So if you have a developer on your team, on your company that knows any of these, they will be able to use. If you're already familiar with just the basics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can do that as well. And today, I will be specifically showing you a widget that's developed with Solid.js, which is a UI library. If you want to see how to develop a custom widget using just plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we have a post in the community that has the information available. We also have previous versions of this presentation for custom widgets on our YouTube channel that explain it. I believe we have something on the Learning Center as well. So if you want to develop widgets based on using just the simplest of the technologies, you can do it absolutely. Today I'll be using Solid.js because it speeds up development for me, and it will make sense when I show it to you, because I want to demonstrate the events specifically that the custom widgets emit and the dashboard emits, and it makes more sense like that because in previous versions of this presentation, when I used plain JavaScript, it was very confusing. We had a lot of codes that just did something really basic. Again, for development, you can run a local server, or if you are developing with plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can just, again, run a local server or just upload it manually to web hosting. You can use TagoIO files for this. Again, I will show this when I am doing the demonstration. I will avoid repeating this for now, but I will show a lot of these things that I'm reading out loud now in the presentation. And you can also use tunneling, which I will show, because when you are developing inside TagoIO, there are some things that you need to keep in mind, because this is a slight spoiler, but it makes sense for me to show this right now. This is running on my computer, this widget for now. I will show it uploaded later, but this is running on my computer. And since it's running on the internet, I need it to be available on HTTPS. So I need to use a tunnel for it to make available my computer server be available to the internet in a specific port. I will show it to you as well, okay? So the second part here that's important to keep in mind is how to structure data, because you need to convert between the TagoIO data records formats and whatever data structure that's better suited for the widgets. I will show this as well, but again, like I mentioned, a data record has a variable, has groups, has metadata. I want to convert this into the format that my custom widget will use. If I'm only using the value, I will only get the value, because it doesn't make sense for me to just keep all the data just in my application, because you might have like a leak of something sensitive. So you normalize this data, and you can do that on the server side, on the client side. I will be showing only client side code today. We can also apply dictionary for multi-language on custom widgets. You can do custom units conversion. This is repeated for this, but this is just, if you want to like take a screenshot of this, this is just general things that you can do with the custom widgets and guidelines for it. So you can use custom fields as preferences, and you cannot use TagoIO formulas on custom widgets, but you can use the preferences, and well, formulas are basically JavaScript anyway, right? So you can use any formulas that you like. I will show you the conversion, so it will make sense when we get there. And I will also compare with our formulas, because I believe Vitor will talk about this later. So we will do a quick comparison with the formulas and how to implement them on a custom widget. And also, again, we need to be handling some client-side events like resizing and things like that. I will also show this because I think developing charts and other things, again, since this is like this is actually exactly an iframe that's used for the custom widgets. It is handled differently by the browser. So if you just put a chart here and you resize the window, it won't know that this was resized. Okay, you need to handle this, and I will show you how to do that as well. And for the last thing, it's deployment. When you can use TagoIO files for hosting. This is capitalized, but yeah. So you can use TagoIO files for hosting these files, which again can be from the build system for your front-end framework or whatever that you use. And this is written down as here as well. So I will be taking just a sip of water. So if you want to screenshot the screen or something, just you can do it right now. But these are general guidelines for the demo, but also general stuff that you need to keep in mind when developing custom widgets. The same will go for the next screen. So I will be moving forwards. Okay, so for the custom widget, I think the most important thing is understanding these 4 events. Because like I mentioned, the widget is running on a frame inside of the dashboard. So this is basically, think of it as like a separate window, right? I have this window, which shows the Tago run, and this is a window here to your custom code. So these two communicate, and they communicate through events. These events are implemented in Tago run and admin, and you can like listen to these events and even send some events back. And these are all available on the custom widget library. We have this is open source, so you can access it and look at the code and understand the events better if you want to. But you can just use it, and here it shows you how to use it in plain HTML. You just embed it. Again, if you didn't hear it before, we have other versions of this webinar where I show you how to develop using plain HTML and JavaScript. Today I will be using a library, so I'm installing this through npm like this, right? So we'll be importing it like this, but if you use HTML and CSS and JavaScript, just import it like this, okay? And we also have some linked examples if you want to look at, so you can understand how to develop your own widgets better. So these events that I want to talk to you about is these 4 events are the most important thing when you're thinking about developing custom widgets. First, we have the onStart event. This handles receiving the widget data structure, the widget structure. That means that when you use this event, when you listen to this event, you will receive information about how the widget is structured. So you can receive colors and parameters. And so if you look at what I mean, I'm going to be, okay, so let me just pull this tab here so I don't have to type right now. I will be doing some typing because it's code, but so for now, I will be showing you like, okay, so if you want to do customization here, you can configure these parameters. So when you look at the widget, you will put the URL. Like I mentioned, I'm using Tunnel. I will show you how to use this. And here we can configure parameters, but how do you receive them, right? You are not going to be doing a separate request to Tago. You will just use that event. So you can use this onStart event to receive these parameters. So let's say that I want to send like my title is, let's say the example title. So this is the key of the parameter and this is the value. So the widget will receive this if if the widget code that you write listens to this. And again, here is where you configure the data that will be sent to the widgets. Today, I will be showing you bus speed. I'm not using this, but I'm not going to change it now. But I will be changing the speed variable from a bus simulator, okay? It is Blueprint, so this is why it's like that. So I'm sending this, and I will also show you these events as well. So again, just to recap, since I went on a small tangent here. So the onStart event handles receiving the widget structure, which let's say includes colors, configuration parameters, so on. Everything that is defined on admin configuration here is available here, okay? The on real-time event, well, is one of the four really important. This is the only one that you don't need to use. So if you don't want to use it, you don't need to. But the rest of them, you might as well use. The only ones that are essential to use are these two, okay? If you need to develop a custom widget, you only need these two events. But these other two are really nice to use and provide a lot of functionality that you probably want to use anyway. But again, so moving along, because I have a lot to talk about still. So the on real-time event, it handles two things. It handles for the admin or Tago run to send data to the widgets on first load, and also sending the updated data. So if my simulator device sends more speed variables, my widget will receive them. And I guess I will be able to show this in real time. It takes some time for the simulator to send it, but I think I will be able to show it. Okay, so this other event is for receiving information from the run user. This receives some information like, let's say, custom preferences that we are going to be using for formulas, for conversions, for units, conversions. And we will also be receiving information like the run user token. Also time preferences like the date formats, right? So if your user uses AMPM, I'm putting parentheses inside parentheses. So like time formats, AMPM. You can also receive, let's say, the user token, run user token. Like I mentioned, if you are going to be building a widget that integrates with a third-party service that you use an API key, you might as well validate that this user actually exists and is logged in to TagoIO. So you can use this run user token to check if the user exists. If you have questions about this, this one, I think it's better for you to contact our CSMs because this is more advanced. It involves the scenario that I mentioned of using Stripe and using a middleware service. It's very specific, the cases that you will need a user token.
Yep, I agree with you, Klaus. That's why I say take advantage of your CSM. If you don't know who your CSM is, you can ask for a demo is one way, and based off your region, we'll know who your CSM is. We contact you that way. There's many different ways, but that's one way as well. I don't want you typing your email address in chat for all to see, just for security purposes. So that would be one way that I could find out who your CSM is, but I don't recommend that. Just ask for a demo or call us or something like that, and we'll take care of you.
All right. So the last event is, this one is really crucial because it's the first one that you execute. This means like it communicates. This is one of the events that communicates from the widget to the platform. So either admin or Tago run. This one says that your code is ready to run. So if you need to do some stuff before the widget is rendered, you can just say on ready when you're ready. It's fairly self-explanatory, right? So again, like it means handles telling the dashboard that the widget is ready. And this is the only event that is always required, because you don't need to use data from the dashboard. Again, well, I forgot about this. That's a valid scenario as well. So if you want to use data from like your own API, for example, you have your own database and you want to a widget that gets data from your API and shows it on the dashboard in TagoIO, you can do that and just use the onReady to tell the dashboard when you're ready to render. Otherwise, it will stay loading. I can show this as well. But okay, so if you have questions about these events, please let us know, or even from what I've said so far, because this is just a small demonstration. I will be skipping this. I forgot that I had this, but I will show you how to set up a server quickly using what I'm using, okay? So I will not show you how to run a development server in all of the frameworks available. You can use other resources for that, or you can even, like, again, talk to one of your developers or someone that knows how to develop a front end if you're not familiar with this. But keep in mind that you can absolutely use just plain HTML and JavaScript for developing your custom widgets. I will show you something that uses like a small build system, okay? So let's take a quick step back, because I have mentioned the goals, right? So this is how the widget looks on admin. So this is the end goal for this presentation here. I have a bus simulator that is sending speeds. It's apparently stopping right now, so it's barely 1 kilometer per hour. So we have a chart as well. So basically here, my custom widget is a combination of a display and a chart. And the chart is customized, and I have like a time series chart, so I can see here the speed and here the time, right? So I can see the tooltip as well. And I have a small button like we currently don't have in TagoIO. So if you want to save this as an image, you can just click it and download it. So you can add functionality that we don't have, like I mentioned before, right? You can also hide the speed, but it makes like 0 sense in this case because I only have the speed, right? But here is our custom widget. This is our end goal. But I will be showing you how the conversion looks before we go ahead. So I'm looking at kilometers per hour because this user is set up to use this. So if I want to see it in miles per hour, I just change it here in my preferences, and the widget will reload. And here I'm seeing it in miles per hour. So it's kind of not easy to see this in this scenario, but pay attention to this. So this goes up to 180. I'm not sure what this bus is doing, but it does. So here we have up to 180. So if I change it, so kilometers per hour, the dashboard, well, it's reloading. And you can see that it goes up to 50 now. So the values here are all changed because this is custom code that I will show today how to do it. And again, it's just JavaScript. I'm using, like I mentioned, solid.js, but like the name says, it's just JS. So it's just JavaScript. And that's it for the demonstration itself, right? So now I'll be moving to the code and how to set up some things. Also, I forgot to show you how to set up the custom units, right? Vitor will talk more about this because you can use this on our own built-in widgets as well, which is really, really cool because you don't need a custom widget just to make a display widget change between Celsius and Fahrenheit, like I mentioned. Vitor will show you how to use this feature to just change on our widgets as well. But for my presentation, I'm showing custom widgets. So this is my units. So speed units, I have added is a drop down. I have a small tooltip here, and the available options are miles per hour and kilometers per hour. And this is just a label. Well, it says the same, but that's because I develop it that way. I will show you what this value means, but look at this thing. It's really important. It must be unique. And it's the value that you use on dynamic formulas or custom widgets. It's the identifier. So if this could be like miles per hour, you could use this, or you can see here that you can use the dictionary. So if I wanted to use like say like miles, so it is translated everywhere for your users, you can do that as well. Okay, I'm not going to change this now. So this is how you set up the custom preferences here. And these are available here. Like I showed you right now, it's just temperature unit and speed unit. Temperature was shown in previous versions of this presentation for custom widget development, and you can look at that as well if you want to. And speed is what I'm going to be using right now for this demo. Okay, so quick water break. If you have questions, I will be looking at the chat for a sec, and before I move on. So we'll be pulling, I think I'll keep this here and just move the code here.
Yeah, so Daniel, you're asking, can you develop a widget and test it outside of Tago and then import it? I'm not technical. Oh, nice. Okay.
Yes, Daniel, I'm going to be writing it. So just so you can, yep, I will show this. Again, you will need to do some things regarding that, because like I mentioned, I'm developing my widget for TagoIO. So I will be hooking the widget up to receive the data from the dashboard. So if you want to develop it like externally, like you asked Daniel, you will need to mock the data somehow. I can show you how it looks in practice in a sec. So here, just to show this in practice, just in a sec. So what I mentioned for the custom server part, so this is my code, right? Like I mentioned, this is a solid JS widgets. It says right here. So I'm using this UI library. It's just an UI library. So just I can do UI stuff easier, okay? So if you like React more, or if you like just plain JavaScript, you can do whatever you want, as long as it's JavaScript, okay? I'm getting some feedback here. David, I'm not sure if it's you or Vitor on the mic.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. So this is the code. So basically, again, if you're familiar with front-end developments, I'm using Vite as the build system. So here's my configuration. It's fairly simple. I will be showing some files here. I will be increasing the font size as well. Hopefully it's readable. If it's not, please let me know in the chat. So here I'm using solid.js, Tailwind CSS for styling, and I'm allowing hosts for trycloudflare.com because it's the tunnel that I will be using. You can use different build systems. Again, you can use any framework or library that just builds HTML and JavaScript, okay? I will stop repeating this, but it's really important because I don't want anyone to get confused, like what is solid, what is this code? It's just the library that I'm using for the UI. Again, so this is how the server is set up, because when I talk about server, what I mean is here I'm running the code. So I just run npm run dev, which is the development script, right? We can also see this file here, it's fine. So you have like the dev script, it runs Vite to build, but the dev builds with this host flag. Well, this is not needed, but it's okay. And I also have this build command. The dev command is for me to develop locally or even to develop within TagoIO without having to upload the build files. And the build command is what you use when you're ready with your widgets and you're happy with the results and you just want this will output JS, HTML, and CSS, okay? This runs like a small server. So that's basically it. This is the built-in configuration, right, for this specific tool. And for the tunnel, so this is my local IP. Okay, so this is how I would access, but I cannot put this on the widgets. This makes no sense. Like I cannot put like localhost and a port because it won't be able to access the server that is running on my computer. So I need to tunnel it. And for tunneling, today I'm using Cloudflare. You can use ngrok, you can use, forgot the name right now, but it's, okay, I will remember it later. But I'm using this and it gives me an URL, which I will copy here right now. And if I try to open this in just a sec, it will show something, but not much. Because like I mentioned, it's hooked up to the dashboard to receive the data. So since it's not located inside the dashboard, it's not receiving any data. So it's not showing any here and any here, but you can see it shows data here, okay? So if you want to do development like this, you will use something else to get the data, and you can mock it or something like that. And I can show you how it looks in code as well, because I think that's an interesting question that I haven't covered in previous webinars. So what I need to do development, it's a development server or just a server to serve HTML and JavaScript in general, and a tunnel because it's needed for you to use an HTTPS address, okay? So you can use something like ngrok or Cloudflare to have a tunnel to develop your widgets. I'm not sure what I changed here. Okay, so let's comment. So moving forward to the code, because I think I may be short on time, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I have 20 minutes.
Yes, 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay. So moving on with the code, thanks, David. So moving on with the code. So again, this is just what I got from running a command that was like npm create. This is what I ran. This is what Copilot is trying to help me. This is what I executed to get this project set up. And then I made some changes to use TagoIO. Like I've done this command as well. Install TagoIO custom widgets. And I also like npm install, like, I'm not going to type the correct commands, but it's basically Tailwind CSS and eCharts. This is for charts. This is for the custom widget library. These two are all you need, because like charts, you may not need it. Tailwind is just my personal preference to develop CSS. So here we have the basic code. I have also done some types here just to make this project have some types, because I'm using TypeScript. This is not needed if you're doing just regular JavaScript. Most of these files come from that command that I just showed you, the create vit. It's just like the basic framework, okay? And well, the CSS, like I mentioned, I'm using Tailwind. So, and the index is just where this came from the build system. So it's just to render the solid JS code. And here, basically, it's everything that I have for my widgets. I will be showing you two files from now on, okay? I'm not even using this, so I'm going to close it. I will be showing you just basically two files from now on, which is the app, which is the widget itself. It could be called widgets. I just forgot to rename it. And this is the charts. So this I'm using, again, like you see, you're going to be seeing this create effect and this on mount. I will talk a little bit about this, but this is specific to my library of choice. So it's different in React or something like that. But in general, it's just JavaScript. I have also added some console logs here, so we can see these events at work. So I can see when I call the ready event, when I call the on start to receive the data from the widget. This is incorrect. Okay, fix it. And I have the on real time event, which receives the data, and to sync the user information to receive the custom preference. Like I mentioned, for our case, it's going to be custom preferences. Okay, so this is basically some state, right? So this can be different and based on the tools that you use. If you're using regular JavaScript, you're probably going to have a global like widget data here, and then you set it. Since I'm using a framework, I'm using what the framework does, which is I have the state and I have a way to set the state. So here I have a variable basically called bus speeds, which is where I'm going to be putting the normalized data. And here I have the widget data, which is the data from devices coming from dashboards communication. So the dashboard will send the widget data through here. So you can see here that on my own real-time event, I just get the data that it sent and just store in this local state variable, okay? That's all I'm doing here. You may not know solid.js, but all I'm doing is I have a state variable. Oh my God, wait a second, because yeah, okay, just ignore. Sorry about that. So I have this part here of the code, right? So this is fairly basic. I have a state, which is just storing local states for the widget to show. And here I have a setter. So I'm setting it to the data that was received. The same goes for the user information. I also have a user information states. So I'm going to put a small comment here, user information for custom preferences. I'm not going to repeat this. This all comes from the widget, except this one, which is derived from the dashboard data. Well, widget data, actually. So the normalized data, what I mean is that I'm only extracting the speed. I will also be showing you this code, but for now it's just, so I have these 3 state variables. This is basically in memory of the browser where I'm storing it. And these are the events. And I'm not even storing this one. I will just be showing you in the log how it looks, okay? And this is the on real-time event. So it's when we receive data from real-time and on the initial load. And this is the sync user information, which receives the information for the user, like custom preferences, the language, data formatting preferences that you can see. Just let me try to change this here. Okay, it's here. So you also receive all of this information here. You receive the name, you receive the email, you receive this data formats, time formats. This is all received by the widget itself through that command, through that event. Okay. So from now on, what I will show you is very specific, but I have an effect to normalize the data when it changes. So basically, when widget data changes or user information changes, I will be doing the normalization. What this means is that basically when this event happens, or this event happens, I need to update the normalized data because this will bring the information from the user, like their preferences, and this brings the data itself. So when I receive the unit that I want from the user, or when I receive the data, I need to normalize it again. And this is why that code is being executed like that. Okay, so taking just a sec here to recap that. So I have the events all here, and they all happen on the mount, which means just like this code to execute when the component is created. So this runs only once. When the component is created, I just hook into the events. So let's say like hit this hook into events, okay? That's all it does. So I'm going to minimize this really quick so we don't have a lot on screen. And again, this is the effect to normalize the data received when the data changes or the user preferences change or are loaded or load, okay? So you can see it here, like normalized speeds. I call this normalized speed data function with the data from the dashboard and the user information. And then I set the state, which is bus speeds, with the normalized data. That's all it does. It's just an effect to synchronize external data. Here we have like the basic HTML, right? So it's just, I'm using like some divs here, and then I have like the block of text there. And I have here, I'm showing you the latest. So I get the bus speeds, I get the latest value, and I get its speed. If it's not available, I show just a dash, like I showed you before, right? The same goes for the units, because I'm using this on normalization. If it's not found or it's undefined, I get the default, which is defined by me, of course. And on the other part here, I call a separate component. This is just is a separate file and a separate component. I will talk about this one later, but I just pass the components, the charts. I just pass the normalized data. It doesn't need to do anything. This is basically like a control component. This is like okay, so let's call this like a main component to handle state communication. And it creates its subcomponents to show on screen. Okay, it's complaining here. Okay, it's fine. So that's all it does. So for the preferences, I will show you this, but the preferences have an identifier. You can use the sync user information event to get it. The default units I defined by myself because these are what it's being stored. Since I'm using the bus simulator, I created like bus simulator. It can be created on TagoIO using kilometers per hour. This is why my default unit is kilometers per hour. So now I'll be showing you the convert speed function. It's fairly simple. I put the default unit here. And if the custom preferences is set to miles per hour, I set units to miles per hour. I convert the speed. And then I do some fixing in the precision, right? To avoid having, this was just Copilot suggested. It's just quick code. You can do something more specific to avoid losing precision, okay? This loses some precision. But this is to make this become, right, something like this, okay? In this case, it was correct. So this is just for that. And in this case, I return the speed and the units. And the same goes for when the preference is not miles per hour. I don't handle it because let's say you add like, I'm not sure about the units, but let's say I add knots per like minutes, whatever, like really random units. I can do this, right? And then I can just put this here and then just do this conversion, which I have no idea. I don't even want to see what Copilot generates with this, but I could use those conversions as long as I add this through admin. Hopefully that makes sense for now. If you do have questions about it, please ask in chat. After this, and this function for converting speed is just a small unit in our code. It's just a function to convert speed. It's all it does. So I'm going to be minimizing it since I covered it already. And the normalized speed data function, basically, I do some checking to see if I had used devices like in the device filters or user filters. What I mean by this is if I had configured my widgets to receive devices, because these receive devices, if I put like my sensor, and if I have, this will make the dashboard retrieve devices that have the tag type set to my sensor. I don't want this. I don't want this data. I just want this data. So this is why in my code, I'm doing this small check. So if it is a resource, this is just incorrect name, but if it is a resource, I skip it. This format for, like I mentioned, normalization is very important because I will show you how this looks, because it's kind of, it can be confusing, but once you get this down, if this part is really important, it's probably the most important parts when you're developing custom widgets that use data from the dashboard, is to know how to normalize the data, because this can be tricky if you've never done it. But once you've done it, you basically have this same function that I have here. And the only thing that changes is this, because this is the normalization. Well, actually this. Let's say like this starts. It's not, okay. So I'm going to call this here end. So this basically is all you do. This is all that changes when you're working with custom widgets in general, because you just need to iterate over all the data the widget receives, right? So I'm iterating over all the data received by the widgets. in my specific case, I'm ignoring these filters, and I'm getting all the data records. And in this case, I'm skipping if it's not a number, right? So if it's not a number, I just skip it. I could do other things like I could do like if data records dot variable is different than speed. I could also skip it, right? This is just very straightforward. I can do anything. Let's say if it's, I want to still handle speed, but maybe it's just like speed new, like you change the variable name and you don't want to skip it. Maybe, well, let's do it like this so it makes more sense. If it's different than speed, and if it's different, if it's not speed, and it's not, well, speed new, yeah, that's fine. But that's irrelevant in this case, right? So I'm just converting the speed and just pushing the normalized data. I'm getting the time, which is in the ISO format. I believe, yeah, okay. So that's all it does. And this is all of the code for the widget itself. The chart, I will show you, but it's very specific, okay? So for the charts, if you see it, again, let's take a small step back. I'm calling the chart component, and I'm passing it the bus speeds. This is the normalized data. So I'm just sending the normalized data to this component, and it receives it here. And basically, when the component is created, it just gets an element on the HTML, gets DOM element for the div. I will show you below. Initializes, this is specific to this library, so I initialize it. Then I get the chart options, which is a helper that I will show you below. And I call this. This is how to use this library specifically. But the more interesting part here is when this, and because this is not specific to charts, if you have another library that you use of charts or anything like that, yeah, so this is quite, almost incorrect. It's just like, I want to resize the charts when the widget resizes, or browser, okay, window. So when anything is resized, I will call this code. So this makes sure that my chart is resized accordingly, because charts use very precise width and height measures, okay? And like on the previous component, which is the main component, I also did some effects to synchronize the data, because again, this is like, it's like external data, right? So the chart is on its own island and you need to update the data in it. So I normalize the data again. And for the normalization of the chart data, this is what I do, okay? So I'm getting from the bus speed that it has this format. It has speed, it has an unit, and it has a time. So for each one of these, for this library, this is like for eCharts specific format, because the library wants this. It supports other formats, but it works better with this, where this is my X dimension, and this, like, it's basically pairs of X dimension value and Y dimension value. In my case, X is time and Y is speed, because it's a time series chart. So this is all it does. From the normalized data, I could have even normalized in the other function call to make it more performant, but I think this makes it a bit clearer, because it's separate things. Then I can just remove the chart and not lose anything. And this is very specific to charts, very specific to charts, because chart libraries in general are basically just JSON interpreters. So I configure this in JSON and it renders, right? So here you can see me calling the options. In the first render, when the component is created, I get the data and I create a chart. And when the normalized data changes, I again get the options, which is this JSON here. So it has some configuration like the tooltips, the legends for the charts, save as image, feature enabled. Here's some spacing. This is where I mean where the x-axis is a time series, because I put type time here. So it handles like ordering and so on by itself. So I don't have to worry that my data is out of order. And the y-axis is raw value. And here's the first series, which is speed. I could put more data in that chart. I could have put, I don't remember what the bus simulator has, but I think it has speed, and I don't remember. But I could put, from our bus simulator, could have put something else here as well. And here's just styling, right? The chart looks a bit nicer because it has like a default line, because it has a gradient. And that's it. And this is the normalized data, which again comes from this here. So that's all of the code that we have. I will show you again. So I will pause a little bit for questions because we're done now. But I will show you the widget again because it's not that much code. I think I've shown you like, let me just count here, not count, but some. It's like, yeah, it's like 200 lines of code, which is basically HTML and JavaScript. It's really simple. The Copilot and other AIs help a lot with this. So this is the end result. So we have, like I showed before, I can change the unit here in my account settings. So I am seeing in kilometers per hour, and it's 1533. I'm not sure if it will update, but I will leave the screen on as I wrap up my presentation. So in meters and miles per hour, it's 55. So here's the chart with this custom style. And again, like I mentioned, you could put like a 3D render here. You could put like a video feed here. You can do anything that's available in the browser, basically. If it's something that we are not supporting yet, you can let us know in our support channels. Like maybe you want to do like WebRTC for communication. You can see that the speed changed. I think it did like a really rough break because it went from 55 to 32 to 0. Yeah, so it just braked. So you probably saw this updating right now, and this is how the real-time events work, and it's really quick. Even though I was doing a lot of code there, it's really quick to do. So let us know if you have any questions, and that's it for the presentation today. Hopefully you have enjoyed it, and thanks everyone for sticking in to the end.
Thank you, Klaus. That is such valuable information. You guys would be amazed, the audience, this is for you, be amazed on how many times I'm asked about custom widgets and those sort of things. So that was really good. One thing I want to show that Klaus had mentioned before we move on to Victor is on our site. One thing Klaus mentioned, if there's a feature that maybe we don't have or something right here, I'm just on the main site, go to Resources, Help Center, click on the community. You have to sign in. I'm already signed in. And then you're right here, idea. You can vote on people's ideas, write your own idea, so on and so forth. So this is really helpful. And we do actively look at this. Again, we've been in business 10 years, and we couldn't do that without listening to our customers. So this is a really good place to do that. With that, I believe we're going to move on to Victor. So let me stop my screen share. And Victor will be discussing his portions of the session, and then we will wrap it up. Victor, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Klaus. So, hope you did like the custom widget presentation. I think it's very important that these presentations came first because it's important for you to understand that Tago is not limited by the built-in widgets that we have. You always have the option to build your own widgets. You can make wizard widgets where the user can go through different pages. You can display your data completely different from any other application. So I think that's very important. So that said, I want to show you what our built-in widgets can do. So I'm going to share my screen. And the focus here on the second part of the presentation is actually to show you how to have dynamic dashboards that is going to adapt to different sensors that you have, different users, and even display data differently based on custom fields that you can set up for your customer. So let's begin here. First thing I want to show you is the formula. So I have set up here a basic dashboard. It's a blueprint dashboard. So it's only checking for devices that has this tag device type with tag value device. And I can use one of these devices here to change the data that is on my screen. So very basic setup. And first thing, by the way, both of the sensors are simulators. So I think what most people would use is a line chart. So I want to start with that one. I get my blueprint device, and I want to pick a variable here. It can be temperature, and just display my data. Yeah, so I have this cool chart here showing different temperatures. And by the way, I also had set up two users on my application here. So I have John Doe and Maritu, which one is a guest user. So I just set up a tag for this user. So by the way, you can come here in tag, set up any tag that you want. And an ArgAdmin user, so it's supposed to have different views of the dashboards. So let me log in with the user, because most of the changes that you can apply for the dashboards actually only matters for the Tago run, and for the developers, it does not change much thing because you can see everything. So let me pick John Doe here and log in Tago room with his account. And I can go to the sensor readings, and I have the freezer here showing up data. So let's say you want to support different units for your application. If you want to do this using data, it means you are going to set up two different variables. Let's say temperature underline F and temperature underline C for Celsius. But of course, this is going to use a lot of your storage to store two different variables with the same value, only change the unit. Doesn't make much sense. So one feature that TagoIO has for the Tago run is custom fields. I'm going to use for Unity here, but keep in mind your creativity with this feature is the limit. You can use for different things. Using our formula, I did set up here this unit for temperature units. So you can create any unit or field that you want to dynamically apply to the dashboards. Distance metric, for example, is just a matter of giving it a name and setting up the type of values that you want for the user to pick. So for temperature unit here, I did set up Celsius and Fahrenheit, with default being Celsius for new users. So they can go to their screen and set up this. So just for you to see, I can put here kilometer by hour, for example, and miles. So just an example here, so you can see me creating new units in real time. And when you do set up this dynamic formula, for your user is going to show up here in their account settings. So if they go to visualization preferences, they can pick the custom fields that you have set up. So I have Celsius here. I'm going to change to Fahrenheit and save. And if I go back to my dashboard, nothing is going to change because I had not set up this. It's already in Fahrenheit. Let me check. I believe it's a freezer, data, temperature. Yeah, it's already in Fahrenheit. So let me pick the other one so I can walk you through. Celsius, save, sensor list. And you can see it's still in Fahrenheit because I had not set up the widget yet. So let me show you how can you do that on the widget. For the charts, I can edit my chart. You may have missed that most of the widget has this cog icon here that you can do additional settings for this specific variable. And it's in the cog because you can set up more variables, right? And have different settings for each one of the variables that you are going to display in the chart. Since I only have the temperature, I can go to formula. If you're new to formula, formula allows you to manipulate what is going to be shown to the user. And it means without changing the data that is stored. So for example, I could multiply this by 2, and I can save this. And now every single unit here in the chart is multiplied by 2. So this is only change on the front end. Your data is still stored as originally had been. You are not changing your data, just the visualization. And one of the functionalities of the formula, if I go here, is the dynamic formula that is going to allow you to use some user preference or browser preferences to change what's going to be shown. So from user preference sites, I have set up the custom units. I have the temperature unit here, distance metric. I can change what's being shown based on the time zone, on the language the user had chosen. I can pick from their browser preference as well. So good to keep this in mind. So for temperature units, I can set up conditions. So if the user had chosen Celsius, I can show the value as it is. And for Fahrenheit, I can change the formula for it. In this case, I'm going to change only the Celsius because my data is stored in Fahrenheit, right? Let me just pick the formula here real quickly. I believe it's going to be something like minus 32 multiplied by 5. There's something like that. And I can confirm and save. And now I do have dynamic formulas for my users. So if I go here, it's now showing up in Celsius. And if I go to my account, visualization preference, I can pick Fahrenheit, save. It's now in Fahrenheit. So this is one way for you to manipulate the data that is being shown. Another thing that you can do in the dashboard is changing what is being shown based on the device itself. So my bus here does not have temperature, but my freezer has. So one way to handle this situation is creating 2 different dashboards or even 2 different tabs, but the navigation would become quite weird, right? You need to go to one button for seeing one device, then to another button to see another device. And navigation, I think, is something you want to be thinking on your application. Is part of the experience the user is going to have. And if the experience is bad, you can guess that your user is going to search for a new application entirely. That is easier, or just have the functionality that he wants. So one way you can do that in the same dashboard when you have two different devices without putting in danger your experience. First, I'm going to create two tabs. So I have one here for freezer and another one here for bus. And I'm going to save and going to duplicate the widget to the bus tab. I'm going to show you step by step here how to do this. So for the bus, I think we have few level. I think that's correct. Let me remove the dynamic formula. Yeah, to have the fuel level. And what's going to do here for the user is that now the user has the two tabs. The freezer one, if I go to the bus, I have the bus tab. And what we actually want to do is to automatically switch the tabs and hide the wrong one when the user changes the device he wants to see. The way you can set up this is going to the dashboard tabs and use the visibility conditions of the tab to automatically hide the tab and force the user to see a different tab when he's changing the device. So for the freezer here, I can add a condition. It can be a user tag condition or a device tag condition. In this case, since the device is the guy here, I'm going to base this on the device. So I can pick my blueprint device, and I can set up a tag and a value for when this tab is going to be shown. So for my device here, at the freezer, I had set up a few tags, and I put a sensor tag with a value for this tag that is specific for this kind of device. So I'm going to use that one, picking, I am in the freezer. Let me pick the freezer here. Sensor, that is sensor with the valid humidity temp. And for the bus, same thing, sensor, but the value here is going to be different. Let me check what I have chosen. I just bus. And confirm, save. And now even here in the developer is already changing, right? So if I go to freezer, only seeing the freezer. If I go to bus, I'm automatically seeing the bus tab. Same goes for your Tago run. Let me just reload. So bus showing one, freezer is going to show a completely different tab. So this allows you to have different behavior in the same dashboard based on what had been chosen here as a device. And you can imagine what you can do when you have a breadcrumb with 3 different blueprint devices or blueprint entities and dynamically changes based on the tabs. Just let me drink a bit of water. So another power that you can have on the dashboards is the ability to set up users. And you can do the same thing for users, right? So as I did mention, I have 2 users here, Mary Jo and John Doe. One has supposed to be the administrator of an organization, and the other one just a guest. And let's say both have access to the users button here. But as John, I want to be able to invite users, delete the users, edit them. But as Mary, you don't want this kind of user to have access to these tools, maybe just visualizing which users are registered, but not have the ability to edit, change things on the organization. So first thing you do have as a tool, let me get rid of this, is the sidebar. So the sidebar allows you to put these buttons that you can see here on my Tago run. And it also has the visibility conditions, which you can manipulate and say, oh, this user is not going to see that button at all. So you can have this kind of control. In this case, I do want Mary to see the user lists. So what I'm going to do is actually change how she can see the user lists. So let me go to the users dashboard. I'm going to create a new tab here. And call this guests and this one admin. And here I can configure the user visibility for this tab. So instead of the blueprint device, I'm going to use the user device or user tag. And this one is going to be our admin. The other one is going to be our guest user. Confirm, save. So now I have the two tabs. So let's duplicate this widget to the guests. And for the guests here, I'm going to remove all the ability to make changes on the dashboard. So removing the control tab, removing the headers tab. As now it's much more simpler. If I go back to my dashboard, John here is going to see the admin tab. So no changes for him. But if I log in as Mary now, she's going to see only the guest tab without the options to manipulate the users. So all these tools had been done thinking on user experience, right? If you are a developer working for yourself, you can do whatever you want, right? You can click any button, but for your users, experience really matters. So you want to be doing this setup instead of setting up multiple dashboards, as well as because creating multiple dashboards is a pain for a developer. Because if you change one thing in one dashboard, you then need to be updating several dashboards. Much easier if you can just navigate, edit things, duplicate here real quickly. And if you have been noticing my screen, I do have this hashtag global.admin, hashtag global.groups, hashtag, and you may be wondering what is this about. If I go to my run, you can see users here is actually showing correctly, very different from what I can see here, the developer. So what I'm using here is a dictionary. So let me see if the widget has dictionaries as well. So you can see my widget here is fully using the dictionary tool. If you go to your dashboard right now, is going to see this option to replace a key by a dictionary. So let me show you how you can set up much language in your application and have support for Spanish, English, Portuguese, Italian, whatever you choose to. In your profile, if you click here on the top, you're going to see the dictionaries option. So that allows you to create a dictionary. The way I have set up here is that I do the single dictionary for a lot of things on my dashboards. The way you are going to set up your dictionary is up to you. What is important to understand is the concepts here. So you can create a different dictionary. It's going to give you a slug. So you can see here I have the global slug, and you can see my dictionaries on the dashboards are using this global slug. to access that specific dictionary. And you can see my dictionary also has two languages, which is English and Portuguese. And what that allows me to do is create a dictionary pair of key and value. So global.admin is going to access this value. Admin for English and Portuguese would be administrador, which is the word for admin in Portuguese. I can add more languages here. So you have the library here with all the language. When I do that, let's get Dutch, for example. I'll get an empty dictionary with all my keys that is being used across all the dictionaries, so I can fill up the values. In order to make that easier for you, you can export and import. So you can export in CSV, in JSON. So you can put in your machine user something like Excel, Google Sheets, just to make it easier for you to edit all this and put the information that you want. And then you can import back the CSV for that specific language. So once you have set up your key pair values, you can just go anywhere that on the dashboards. And let's be clear, this is only for dashboards because TagoRun only allow for your customers to access dashboards, right? They cannot see devices, they cannot see users, etc. So in the dashboards, you can use dictionary freely in the TagoRun as well. If you want to set up dictionary here in the title, if you are using custom settings, you have temperature units, you can put dictionaries here so you can see it's already getting my dictionary so I can quickly fill up. And I think that's it for the dictionary. Very simple tool and allows you to quickly have a multi-language and have the CSV that you can share with others in your company so they can fill in the values for you, your choice. Now, I want to get back for the sensor readings to show you a new tool that we released past year called Data Analytics. So this is a tool our customers had been requesting for a long time. Basically, since I've joined Tago at all, that is the ability, for examples, that you can put a chart or a display widget. Let me put a display here. And that you can perform some analytics on the data before displaying. So in the past, if you want to show up for your customer at the average value for fuel, or if you want to have a chart like this that is going to show only the maximum values, only the minimum values, that was very hard. You would need to create an analysis. This analysis would be running every time you receive new data or a specific interval of times to do these calculations and create a completely new variable in the device for you to display in the dashboard. But now we have released these analytics features that allows you data analytics here that allows you to perform all these operations during visualization time. So you don't need analysis anymore. You really don't need any fancy things. You just come in here and select what you want. So for example, I can do a count, which is going to count the number of variables I have or data I have for that specific variable. I do have average, sum, max. So for example, if I want to show all the aggregation of maximum values, in this chart, I can just pick max here. It's going to ask me to set up some fields. And here you can see it's complaining because data analytics only works for 1 month. So I need to set up this for 1 month. and also going to complain about the cache. So data analytics is something that is very heavy on processing, and when you have lots and lots of customers using analytics, it's going to cost a lot. So cache is mandatory when you are using this feature, and what the cache is going to do is that it's going to cache the response for a couple of time, and the minimum you can set up here is 1 minute. So it means if a new data comes into my device in the next minute, it's not going to show up in the dashboard until the cache is reset. Usually, it really depends on your use case. How frequently do you think you are going to be receiving data, new data? To set up this correctly, I would suggest to set up cache for the minimum that you think is going to work for you. So now it's showing only the minimum value for minimum. Let me see if I do have. We also can use the aggregate. I think minimum was bad for that specific variable. So aggregate, I can pick the average. I can do this, the average per minute, per hour. The thing with the minimum is that it's going to pick the minimum, only the one value, the minimum. Aggregate allow you to aggregate data in specific intervals. So this is what I was actually wanting. So I can aggregate per minute here and get the average or the minimum per minute. It's going to give me this new fancy chart with minimum applied aggregated for minutes. So you can see I only have 4 minutes. And of course, since my device is sending data each 5 minutes, you see these jumps here in the chart. Same goes here for the display. So display, it would make much more sense to use the other one. So I can pick the minimum value for 1 month. Same thing, I need to enable the cache. And then I can see that for this month, the minimum I received was 27%. So David, how much time do we have? Do I have time to show the metadata?
Yeah, if you could do that in 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. So another tool that we have is the metadata. So metadata can be used in different ways. I think the most common one is to save on storage. There's a lot of data, a lot of customers that send data and create one variable for each single data he wants to show in the dashboard. But you actually don't need to do that. Creating a completely new variable is only important if you are planning to do filters. For example, using data analytics, you need to have a single variable so you can use the value parameter of your data in order to perform the calculations. But for example, if I have data that is sent together with speed or location, for example, that I don't plan to be filtering, I don't plan to be trying to find this data among all my data, and I can actually just show this information together with the location. You can use the metadata information to send that. So let's, for example, create a custom location here. Just an example. I'm not being good here to think of a real use case. So let me put something weird here. And for this custom location, I can send other type of information that usually comes with location. For example, altitude. I can say there's one value here. I can say it has a precision, and I can send this data together with the custom location. This is going to be to save me 2 variables, so 2 data storage. And if you are sending location each minute, it's a lot, right? So I can store this. And if I go to my dashboard, I can use the display here. Change this to the custom location. And just to show you, I'm going to save, but first let me disable this. So if it's just going to show as it is, it's going to get my value field, right? So let's say I want to show the precision stats, but the precision is always being sent together with the custom location stored in the metadata. That's when the formula comes in place. So formula allows you to access anything you have inside the metadata just by specifying the metadata a keyword here and accessing any of the fields you have the metadata. So for example, I can pick precision, and as you know, metadata do not have that unit field, so you can get a fixed unit here for precision if you want to display units. So let me save, and now accessing the precision information that is sent together with the metadata. You can use this for a lot of things. I know we use a lot on all the applications we do because we are want to save on data storage, and sometimes we just want that data to be very saved really together with some other data. And we are not going to be filtering, we are not be applying data analytics to precision. So that makes things very easy. Metadata also has some other capabilities depending on the widget that you are using. If you are doing custom widget, it really matters if you want to use in your custom widget or not. In TagoIO built-in widgets, you have some keywords in the metadata that can be used by that specific widget to perform some changes. One of these common keywords is color. So with color, you can, this one basically affects most of the widgets. If you send a color, it's going to affect that specific point in many widgets. Let's see if it works here for the display. It's not picking up color for the display. I know it works for map, so let me pick map here. I just need a real map variable. Yeah, pick that one. Custom location. Let me remove all these. And here I can have the metadata. Color red. You can send hexadecimal as well if you want to. Let me create a map here. Just straightforward create, and you can see it's affecting the color of my pin through the data. So it's not a setup in the widget itself. In most cases, it's going to override your setting of the widgets. I do believe you have an option here. Let me see if they won't have. Usually you would see an option somewhere to disable metadata to override any function of your widgets. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is an option here, just don't know where. And just for demonstration, let me send another data, setting this to green. So you can see it affects the color. You can send a hexadecimal as well if you want to. and it's going to affect the pin color. For you to know all the keywords issue widget has, you need to access the documentation here for that specific widget. It's going to tell you which keywords are available. I think map is only the color. I do remember, Klaus can tell more. I do remember you also have the option to change the pin. Here, metadata. So you have color, icon, if you want to show the icon, change the icon for that specific widget. And I think that's it on what I want to show you. Hope you liked this presentation. David?
Yes, thank you very much. There is a question here. Regarding data analytics, is it possible to sum the values of two different variables that come from two different devices?
Oh, that's not possible. Since this is currently running on the front end, right? You can only set up data analytics for specific variables. So it's by variable. You cannot, for example, here, if I would want to get full level from a different device. If I had another blueprint device, you could not mismatch that. It may come in future updates because we have been receiving a lot of requests about showing up multiple devices in a single widget, like a map. So cross-referencing different devices is something we are thinking about, studying how to do, and mostly thinking on the experience for the developer to do all this setup.
Got it. Thank you, Victor. Okay, everybody. As I mentioned before, follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter. You'll also receive an email from me here in about a half hour. Please take the survey, answer that question for the Learning Center certificate. We'll get that over to you. And another good thing, we do these, and for those that weren't on here at the top of the call, we do these 2 or 3 times a year. So they're very, very popular. Just keep an eye out for our next session. But I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much. I know that some of you learned some valuable stuff just based off of the interaction I'm seeing in chat over the last 2 days. So we're really glad to do this for you guys. And again, reach out to your CSM with any questions that you may have. But other than that, thank you, everybody. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world. Bye-bye.